Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is Corona with Lime. I'm your host, Chris Godwin. That is Adam Levi down there. And tonight, we have a very special co-host, and we're going to promote him to co-host because he is co-host now. Ross Godwin,
Hey,
my
how's it
brother
going?
right
Thanks for
there,
having me on the show.
who is inexplicably wearing a Rams jersey. No one knows why. Um, but
Oh,
before...
I'm just gonna adjust my set here.
Oh, Super Bowl.
Hold on,
uh,
okay. Sorry, I just
just,
had to adjust. I had to
okay.
adjust. The monitor wasn't quite right. I had to just.
Who was the last team in the Super Bowl? Gee, I don't know. They lost. Anyway,
No. Hey. What was it? Three out of the last 3 years, two of them, our teams lost in the Super Bowl. So that's kind of cool.
That's right. That's right. Well, at least we have something. We all have something in common. We all appreciate supporting a football team.
The AFC owns
losers.
the NFC West, unfortunately.
That's right.
Yeah, when I was 8 years old, my team was in the Super Bowl. You're right. It was so recent.
That's right. So tonight, the show is all about sports. We're talking about sports in the age of coronavirus. It is a kind of a weird, kind of a side situation that's going on with the whole pandemic in general, the way our society is kind of coping with social distancing and how we're kind of all living through it. So we want to start the show off. First, as always, check in, right? Adam, how have you been? We last saw you on Thursday. Today's Monday. How you been?
Doing good. Same as always. Just trying my social distancing. I've been actually getting some more housework stuff done around the house. I replaced my faucet. I've never done any plumbing before this weekend, but that was quite a fun feat. And then I think I'm going to start working on my patio next now that the sun is starting to shine.
Wow. Well, I mean, yeah, and we've had some pretty wild weather here in the DC area too, right? Like it's been on and off. Like today, especially, was on and off. It was cloudy, and then it was sunny, and then it rained really hard, and then it was cold, and then it was hot, and then it was like April in Washington D.C. can be a little bit rough. So
yeah,
there's that.
Stupid weather. Weather.
But here's what I have to tell you. Anything that is building, learning a new skill, you learn some plumbing as a result of this, right? Like, what were the odds of that? Like, if everything had been normal, you probably would have just hired a plumber or somebody to come in and take care of that for you. But you're like, nope, I'm going to take care of that myself. And you did it. And I saw a photo of it and it looks great. Well done.
This is the age of not being lazy. That's what this is.
Yeah, nobody has that kind of time anymore.
Well, hold on. It's not necessarily the age of not being lazy. It's just that, the laziest way to deal with the problem now is to solve it.
Excellent.
I was super lazy, dude.
It's like
that is our first argument of the show. That's how you know it's a sports show. And it's so Ross. Before we get into the numbers, how are you doing? We saw you a couple weeks ago. You were a guest. We were talking about journalism in the time of COVID-19. How you been since?
I've been all right. We're holding up here in the other side of DC from where you guys are in the district itself.
That's right. Actually, we have a representative from Maryland, DC, and Virginia.
Yes, there you go. The DMV.
We are the DMV.
The DMV here. Virginia, DC, Maryland, all represented.
It's been good so far. Honestly, like I feel lucky in that I still have a lot of work that I'm working on. I'm busy all the time. We have some cool neighbors who we've been sort of like over the fence drinking with, having like porch separated happy hours.
Happy hours, right?
But it's funny because, like, in spite of the, all the chaos in the world and the weather today specifically, in general, it's been really beautiful. We spent a lot of time in the garden, and it's like, if you were just going for a walk most days, you wouldn't have any idea that the world is like collapsing right now around us. So it's kind of cool.
Right. Well,
speaking of the weather, did you guys hear about these tornadoes that hit in the South? There was
that doesn't surprise me. There was some crazy winds.
1.2 million people without power this morning. I can't imagine being in this quarantine with no power. Like, then I would just, I don't know.
Yeah, what do you do then?
Yeah, especially if you're working from home and you don't have power right now. That is a great point, Adam. Well said. Yeah. And that is really scary.
The apocalypse, Bridget.
It's the apocalypse, right? Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's pretty scary. It's getting more and more like that every day. And speaking of which, before we go any further, as always, we should do the numbers.
Yes,
as is our tradition on the show. So let's start where we were last week. So last time we were on the air was April 9th. At the time, the total cases in the United States was 427,460 according to the CDC. Total deaths was 14,696. That was last Thursday. And today is April 13th. Total cases in the United States, 554,849. And this is the tough one. Total deaths, 21,942. I did the math earlier. That's about 7,000 people have died between when we were last on the air and now. Worldwide, it is actually worse. Total cases last week was 1,598,226. Total deaths, 95,403. That was last Thursday. Today is Monday, April 13th. Total cases, 1,921,816. Total deaths, 119,542. That is, those are some pretty bleak numbers there, Adam.
Yeah.
As is always, every time we go back on the show, and we somehow manage to blow our own minds with the craziness of that. But today's show is taking a little bit of break from the doom and gloom. We've done a whole series of shows about living, social quarantining, social distancing and quarantining, working from home, our media environment, conspiracy theories, all the dark side of this. But tonight we're going to keep it a little bit lighter. Tonight we're talking about sports. And of course, coronavirus has had a massive impact on sports, as we're going to get into in a little bit. It has been pretty profound in general, like across the board. It's hard to imagine an area that is more affected by something like this than sports, an entity that depends on crowds, depends on people coming together in tight spaces. Kind of by definition, right? Like, how do you do that? And watching different leagues, professional leagues, and organizations in the country and around the world has been fascinating. And different organizations have had different reactions to it. It's been kind of amazing. So I kind of wanted to start there, and I'm going to go back to our graphics board for just a minute. So tonight we're talking about sports. So there are three general realms of sports that I wanted to cover. The first is football, which I think of all sports is the most interesting right now. We're going to get into why that is in just a second. I'm sure there are millions of people around the world screaming that, and this is what I should specify, by the way, this is American football, not soccer.
Any other kind.
I also want to get into esports, the rise of esports. It is such a huge deal right now. Ross and Adam, both on the call, are both big esports players, both big video gamers. They have a lot to talk about in that space. And I also want to talk a little bit about the RIP, formerly 2020 Olympics. So we're going to get into all that in a little bit. So let's start here. The NBA suspended their games on March 11th of this year. They announced they were suspending their entire season. The NHL suspended their entire season on March 12th. Major League Baseball suspended their season the same day, though I'm reading that it is possible that they may decide to hold empty stadium games as early as May, but we can get into that in a little bit. And then, of course, the NFL season is still on, of course, pending some decisions by the NFL medical staff, who has to determine that it is safe before that. Of course, we are still, about 4.5 months away from the NFL season starting. So, but of course, the really big news is that the draft, the NFL draft, which we all love, is going to be on April 23rd and 25th, just days away from now. Gentlemen, Ross and Adam, I can't wait. I am just to be clear at the start of this episode, I have no idea what I'm talking about. I'm a sports fan, but I have no idea what I'm talking about. So Ross and Adam are going to be doing most of the talking tonight because they're the pros. Dive in, guys. What are we expecting at the NFL draft this year?
Ross, why don't you take it away, bud? NFL draft.
All right. Well, first of all, it is very exciting as a football fan, as a major football fan, that the draft is still on. It is interesting that in this, given the current situation, it's going to be the first ever remote draft. it's great that they're still figuring out ways to do it. I mean, they're basically doing it the same way that we still have meetings with our office, coworkers.
Yeah.
Which, if you think about it, makes sense. There's no actual reason that the draft has to be in person and live.
For sure.
In fact, for many years early in the draft, it was like not even televised. It just kind of happened, and nobody was present. It was like people in like a boardroom. Basically.
They made it an event for TV.
Right. They made it an event and a spectacle for TV. They have big crowds gathered in front of the stage and all the cameras. It's just for spectacle. It's not a necessary part of the process. And I think it'll be interesting to see what impact, if any, this has on the draft going forward in the future. It's going to be way less expensive for the NFL to put on.
With that being said, like this event can still be televised in the fact that it's remote. And as you were saying, like there's no reason for them to actually physically be there besides to shake hands with Roger Goodell. I mean, maybe he likes being booed, so that might be a reason that he wants to keep doing it every single season. But
I like to imagine that, like, whatever happens, like Roger Goodell is going to have a little boo machine next to him because I think it's like tradition. And he gets something he has to boo at him. Everyone else has that pew pew pew.
He loves the booze. He loves it. Roger Goodell always loves the booze. You see it too when he walks out. He always has that, like, if they start booing and he smiles a little bit, like, yeah, bring it on, haters. Like, he doesn't care.
Yeah, he loves it.
All the way to the bank, he like wipes his tears with money.
Wouldn't that be nice? So yeah, I agree with you. Like this event doesn't need to be televised, and you're right. It only started within the last 10 years being like a major event being televised. That they split it into an extra day. Like they're trying to get as much money out of it as possible, but without having to put anyone in danger, without having to have a bunch of people together in a small compact area where everyone's getting COVID. This is a very feasible way to do this. And I could see this as becoming an installment moving forward, regardless if we're on a quarantine or not. Like there's no reason we all need to be together, and this can still be televised in this format. Everyone's going to watch, everyone's going to see. I think it's awesome. I'm still very much excited for it.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not quite the same, but in fantasy football, I mean, people have been remotely drafting with people all over the country for years. It's not any less fun for doing it. I mean,
with that being said, that's not going to change. Regardless, when we do our fantasy football draft, the three of us, we're wearing masks and but we will be there.
Of course,
in person. Okay.
Of course, but we suffer for our art, Adam. That's the thing.
Anybody who's ever done a football draft, like doing it remotely, it doesn't have the same magic. You got to do it in person because like the shit talking and all this, it's all part of it's part of the fun.
Oh, it's better.
You can't do it in a vacuum, right?
The spectacle is there, and the spectacle is fun. That's why people got into it in the first place, right?
It's an institution. My father introduced me to fantasy football when I was a wee lad. And I remember on Monday nights and Tuesday nights, we would take the paper that would be printed on Monday that would have all the statistics of every player from Sunday's games. And we would have our roster and we would have our set points that we had to calculate. And we would go line by line through each player, through each stat line that they held from that day before. And we would calculate all the points out manually. This was before Yahoo Sports. This is before, ESPN had their online forum. This was the foundation of what it was. Like I was with my father and we were going through sports statistics. Like it was amazing.
In the newspaper the next day.
The next day. I grew up in the giant party, get everyone together for a draft, make fun of each other ruthlessly while eating good food and drinking cold beers. That is the essence of the football draft. And that is why I refuse to change. Call me old-fashioned, but I enjoy the live draft. Like
old-fashioned, I'm dad.
Oh, man.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Great. I love that story though.
This draft, I'm gonna cut to graphics again because I just want to do a little high level look at what the NFL draft is gonna look like this year. So the NFL draft, the 2020 NFL draft, will take place live in Paradise, Nevada, for some reason. It will be conducted,
is it live?
It will be conducted. It will be conducted virtually.
Okay.
But it will be done live, as in it will. The calls will be made to the players like we see that happens on TV.
In real time.
In real time, yes. In real time from April 23rd to the 25th. They'll be conducted virtually, but all of the events that are surrounding it, which are famously a thing, they will not happen this year. It's all just going to be the draft itself. So none of the parties, none of the other like glitzy things that the cameras cut to on ESPN, none of that. The 32 teams of the NFL will draft 225 positions during this draft over the course of 2 days. Players to fill 225 positions over the course of 3 days. That's right. The first overall pick goes to the Cincinnati Bengals. And my first question for the two of you gentlemen is, who is that going to be?
I'm pretty sure they're going to go for a quarterback.
Why?
Joe Burrow, I think.
Yeah.
I agree with Adam.
Why?
Why are they going for a quarterback? What happened to Andy Dalton?
I think they're desperately in need of a quarterback. I mean, Andy Dalton hasn't been good in a long time, and he gets injured pretty frequently. I'm pretty sure that if they do this, I bet Andy Dalton has a couple years left as a starter. He'll probably be a journeyman after this. But while he still has the starting capability, I would imagine that the goal would be to draft somebody young, let them learn a little bit from Andy Dalton, because, I mean, what's the saying? Those who can't do, teach. Well, he's the kind of guy that I feel like he probably knows all the fundamentals of the game. But when it's all happening real time, like he's had seasons where he's played lights out. He's played great. Obviously, when AJ Green is healthy and on the field, that helps a lot for him. But outside of that, I feel like mistakes happen here and there. He probably knows better. He probably knows, like I said, the fundamentals, but it's just not quite translating. So I would think that they're going to draft a quarterback, give him a couple seasons left with Dalton, and then when he's ready to take over the reins, Dalton's going to be on his way out of there as a backup somewhere else.
Fair enough. All right, so the Bengals' first overall pick is going to be a quarterback, which is, I feel like, rare now. I feel like it's most often you see like defensive positions people go for first. It's rare to get a quarterback in the first overall pick, right? Like that's becoming more and more rare.
Yeah, a good edge rusher is probably. I mean, you know, like especially it's because you're right. But usually that player, if it's that case, it's like an edge rusher. You know, because those are such incredibly valuable positions. Like that's. Yeah. I mean, that's probably.
It's valuable. That's
quarterback is probably the most. Yeah, quarterback's probably the most valuable position on a football team, but a close second might be, you know, your Mike linebacker, right? Like because those guys, they're game changers, and if they're good enough, it doesn't matter if it's Tom Brady or Andy Dalton. Like the quarterback can't do anything if they're being harassed.
Let's talk about Tom Brady for a little bit. There are a lot of speculation about who's that. I have no idea. The GOAT. Boo. I'm not a fan. I know there are fans out there. I get it. You know, he's a gentleman and a scholar, but he's done at the Patriots. We're entering a new chapter for Tom Brady. What's his future?
I don't understand anything. We're just going to put it that way. This guy, and man, is it possible for you to get a picture on here from when he was drafted? Because this guy...
I think I can arrange that, yes.
When he was drafted, you should look at this picture. This dude sold his soul to the devil. He was sloppy looking. He hadn't started a game for a team. He comes into the league, and there's nobody, this zero.
Oh, God, this is
blows
really bad.
Up the scene. He was the last person in the draft. Wasn't he the...
I thought he was like a 6th-round pick or something. No,
he was a really, really late pick. He wasn't Mr. Irrelevant, but he was just a really, really late pick, right? Yeah. And here he gets drafted to this team. Drew Bledsoe gets injured, and in comes the next person who's going to play for 22 years. Like, when did he come in? 2000 season, for 20 years, right? No one expected that this random dude is going to be lighting up for so long. I mean, he was going to a Super Bowl every other season of his career. I think that's his average, and that's the most ridiculous stat line ever. I don't think there's any argument that he's the greatest quarterback of all time. Just in sheer numbers, length of time played, consistency. Why leave? Like, I can't imagine.
Are you talking about this guy?
Yeah. That's the one.
Wow. Look at Tom Brady. First of all, this is the highest res photo I could find of him from what year was this?
2000.
2000. Amazing.
Yeah, that's that's that guy. And now, all of a sudden, this dude is going through GQ ads and models like that's his job instead of throwing footballs. And like this guy has literally been given every single blessing in the world. I'm just wondering why. I can't imagine building a career and a life with one team for 20 years.
Literally 20 years.
Which is more than most people play in the NFL at all, much less with one team. And now he's gone. So I can't imagine what was going on behind the scenes. Some kind of tension where what's down in Tampa? He's been at Gillette Stadium for 20 years. I don't understand.
If you Google average career length in the NFL, Google will tell you the answer is 3.3 years.
Yeah, this guy crushed the average. Crushed the average
6 times.
And with one team and in one place. Like it doesn't make any sense to me.
So I agree. It's kind of wild. As far as my estimation goes, and we'll never know unless Tom Brady tells us, but I feel like he's the greatest quarterback of all time. I think there's like old school people who will cite quarterbacks who just weren't throwing nearly as much to prove that. I mean, he's the best. He's still pretty good. Last year was his worst statistical season in a long time, but he's still pretty good. He's a smart guy. One could argue he's already done it so many times. He has more rings than anybody else. He's already proven it. Like the only thing left to prove is that it was all him and not just Bill Belichick being the master chess master. And I think it's kind of a gamble for him, but like that's the only thing he has left to prove was that he was as much a contributor to that dynasty as Bill Belichick. That's first of all. Second of all, besides like he's always had like one good slot receiver for a few years. He also had Gronk, but he's never had like a good wide receiver core beyond like one good guy on the team. Like
Randy Moss.
And then really ever since then it's been like little slot receivers and tight ends.
Wes Welker, dude. Welker was a beast.
Little slot receiver.
I got you.
He and Julian Edelman are very good, right? But like it's just that's one position. Like he's never had like a wide receiver core like he's about to get in Tampa Bay. I mean, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin,
Oh, he's gonna throw the ball to
Wide
you.
receiver to the Bucks. Do you think he's gonna end up with the Bucks? Do you think it's gonna happen?
Who?
Tom Brady. Do you think he's going to end up with the Bucks? I saw
he
today.
is the Bucks.
He's on the Bucks.
He's on the Bucks.
He's a Buccaneer.
Okay, yeah.
So he's never had a receiver core as talented as the one he's about to go to.
Is Deshaun still there?
When and how did that happen? He just
straight up left.
Last I heard there was talks happening, but that hadn't actually.
No, he signed. This was a few weeks ago. He basically he was just becoming a free agent because he kept signing these like 1 year extensions. He was a free agent and he signed with the Bucks because. And that's the other thing about Bill Belichick is that Bill Belichick has always been the guy who releases a player that 1 year a little earlier than they should. Like he's never been sentimental about parting ways with good players. He's never fallen in love with anybody. Even with Tom Brady, I think he's always been falling in like with him. Like he will do what he needs to do to win, and nobody is better than his system for him. And Tom Brady wants to show that everyone that he is the GOAT. And it's not just because he had a great coach. It's going to be interesting to see. Bruce Arians is a great coach too. It'll be interesting to see what Bruce Arians can do. And Bruce Arians almost went to a Super Bowl with Carson Palmer. So I mean, it can be done, and it might be pretty good. I'm excited about the Bucks. I think it'll be great. I think it'll be a lot of fun to watch. I think Tom Brady's going to surprise a lot
of great weapons on the Bucks too. Not weapons. Chris Godwin included, but like there's lots
Mike
of
Evans.
Mike Evans, yeah.
OJ Howard.
Is it just me, or do you feel like Tom Brady should have gone to like the Colts? Wouldn't that have been?
Well, the Colts already got their franchise quarterback of the future, Philip Rivers is now gonna lead the Colts. That's got
Philip Rivers went to the Colts.
Yeah, Philip Rivers, the Colts. No,
see, I thought that Tom Brady's going to end up with the Chargers, like for sure, because like Giselle, like they own a house together in L.A. Like they were like, oh, this is our retirement gig. We're like moving back to L.A. We're getting out of Boston, and we're going to L.A. to enjoy some sunshine and hang out. But no, they decided to go to Florida instead.
The problem with the Chargers
is they're terrible.
They don't have a fan base. Like Tom Brady would be good for the Chargers, but the Chargers wouldn't be good for Tom Brady. Like he's not going to sell many jerseys, right? For the Bulls.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem.
The Colts did actually pursue Tom Brady. They tried to get him. They didn't start with Philip Rivers. Philip Rivers was the backup to Tom Brady.
Sure. But I mean, it just all those years of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, back and forth, and then there was the kickers and stuff were going back and forth between like
Vinatieri and
Vinatieri, Vanderjack. Like I don't know, there was that period of just intense rivalry between these two because these were the best gunslingers in the league, facing off. And then Peyton leaves, goes to Denver. It would just be interesting if Tom left to go to the Colts.
Hey, and to that point, Manning looked pretty good he resurrected his career for a year or two in Denver. I mean,
won a Super Bowl
out very fast and very suddenly, but like won a Super Bowl with a new team. Yeah. Maybe the Bucs are going to have a good year.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, but you know what? You bring up a really interesting point. The fact that the only thing left to prove, and this might be between both of them, both him and Belichick. Belichick's like, I've got something to prove. I can do it with anybody. And Tom Brady is like, I got something to prove. I can do it without Belichick. This could be that you've brought up the only feasible reason that I could possibly think of that he would want to make the switch, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense to me. It is going to be an interesting year for the Buccaneers for sure. You know what? Let's switch gears a little bit since we're talking about specific teams and big stuff. This has been a really big offseason for the Redskins.
Oh, every year the Redskins seem to win the offseason, don't they? They're really good at that.
Oh, like, I don't know. Well, I don't know if you remember multiple decades of not winning the offseason, where they won they failed the offseason and the regular season. At least they're getting something.
I just gotta get half of it right.
I feel like it should be said though, just on the record right now, I grew up a Redskins fan. When I was young, actually before I was born, my father actually tried out for the Redskins. He used to be a semi-pro kicker. Really, really cool. So I grew up in a Redskins household for sure. But over the last, obviously we haven't won since '92. So since then it's been terrible. But I feel like the last couple decades has been a quick deteriorating situation, and things just seem to get worse and worse. And this isn't even necessarily on the field stuff. This is like off the field stuff, like the way top-down management is working, things like this. There was that whole fiasco on a yacht with the cheerleaders, like the implications that were there. Like it's things like that. Like
because
it makes
of the
me
implication.
Because of the implication.
I mean, if the answer is no, the answer is no. Obviously, they're not going to say no.
They're not going to say it because of the implication. I love you guys. This is why we're doing this. But it's
apologies to anybody who does not get that reference.
Yeah, it's for those reasons that I'm disappointed to be a fan of this team that I've suffered through so many heartbreaking seasons with. I've gone through a lot with this team, the ups and downs. That's the job of the fan, is to be there through thick and thin and to go through those ups and downs. And hopefully your team rights its ship. But right now I feel like they're just throwing money at problems, and they're trying to do what they can to appease investors in the weakest fashion. Yes, fire the coach, get a new coach. Okay, been there, seen that 2,500 times over the last 15 years. Like, yeah, okay, now we got to switch gears with the new quarterback. Now we have to switch gears with new receiving core. Now we got to worry about putting in a rookie before he's even ready, benching the veteran that we already spent money on for this rookie. I understand that Case Keenum wasn't doing anybody any favors. He wasn't lighting up the show. I was like, but personally, I felt like it was too early for them to make that switch.
Did you know that Haskins had never thrown with the ones before being put into that game?
Yes.
He had never thrown. Jay Gruden, in his infinite wisdom, decided to bench a quarterback and throw a rookie in there, having never played with the players he's about to play with, going up against a pretty good team. Like the fact that it's like he was begging to be fired. He wanted to get out of there because, like, I can't imagine why else you'd make such a poor.
Are you sure he made that call?
I'm not sure, but I would like to think that a coach has. I think that's a coach. I don't know if anyone can make a call besides a coach in that situation.
Oh, I know somebody who can make a call like that besides a coach, especially for the Redskins organization, because this person's been doing that since they took the team. I want this person to go in. You better make it happen. Put them in now. Things like that. Now, granted, yeah. I wasn't there. I'm not on the field. I don't get to make these decisions. I don't make these calls. I feel like there's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes than most people know. And yeah, you're right. You made a good point earlier. I think we were offline when you said it, but at least Bruce Allen isn't there anymore. I think Bruce Allen was terrible for the organization. Yeah, he's a money man and he's good with the marketing side of things. This is football. Like, the fans don't care about the marketing. I don't care. You can market my shitty team as much as you want until they start winning games and playing like they're supposed to and playing with heart. It's always going to be a bummer. So with that being said, let's get back on track. I know we've kind of taken like divergent rails, but
it's pretty awesome divergent rail, and
yeah,
whatever, that's
so.
Well, for what it's worth, the Redskins get the second pick in the draft this year.
Thank you, Ross. I was just about to say Redskins get the second pick of the draft this year. Who are they going to pick?
Okay, two options that is being floated around. Chase Young is the lock at number 2 if they take it. The only other option would be
edge rusher, Chris, to our point earlier.
An edge rusher, exactly, specific to your point. The only other option would be if somebody comes out with this earth-shattering situation because they want to move up into the number 2 spot, and we find a way into extra picks in the first round. Like, if we can swap down and pick up an extra pick in the first round plus another couple of years, if we find like an RG3 style trade, I bet that they would at least consider it. I mean, we need a lot of help. We need a lot of young talent to bring this team up. I don't know what else they could do other than that. I mean, Chase Young would definitely be a lock at number 2.
Adam, do you feel that Haskins is the quarterback of the future, or do you think that this is like a really good quarterback class? Do you think they should pull in Arizona and just say, fuck it, let's just do it? I'm sorry. Screw it. Let's just take the best guy. We had number 2.
No. Let's fuck it. Let's say fuck it here in this scenario.
We're
I don't know if we're a family show.
Yeah, this is family friendly. Okay, so drop F-bombs.
Adam and I aren't supposed to swear, but you can swear as much as you want.
Okay.
Dude, that's a tough one. That's a really, really tough one because Dwayne Haskins, his track record, he had only played one season in college before we drafted him. So his time period of building rapport for himself is very minimal. His tape is minimal. And here's a guy that you're putting the weight of a very dysfunctional franchise on. I mean, even RG3, who had established himself over a long period of time, did you see how quickly his personality changed on tape? Like, you either do good and you get an ego because, I'm doing good here in DC, or B, you're crushed under the weight of extreme dysfunction. And I don't know how Dwayne Haskins can hold up to that because I haven't seen enough tape on the guy. And the one good thing is each game he played in at the end of last season, you could tell he was making strides. He was getting better. He wasn't Deshaun Watson fucking throwing bombs out the gate. Like, that, he wasn't that, but he was making reasonable steps forward, right? It would be really hard for this franchise to turn tail and run and pick another quarterback. If they do, I'd have to wonder why they even made this pick last season after they spent money to go out of their way to get Case Keenum. Like, I know we didn't pay him a lot of money, but we spent money to get Case Keenum, and then we drafted a quarterback anyway, and then to draft another quarterback, we would just be blowing pick after pick. How many times do you hit the reset button? Reset. Like, we need consistency, and we need to actually build a team. If we keep re-picking the same position that we have for the last 8 years, we've gone through multiple first-round receivers, and we've gone through multiple. Oh, I don't even want to talk about that first-round pick. I don't even remember his name. That's how terrible it was. The first-round receiver we picked a few years ago, he was like our 16th.
Doxson.
Yeah, Josh Doxson. Wow.
Doxson. We got Doxson here.
We got Doxson here.
See, nobody cares.
It's just unbelievable. I don't know. How do you feel about
I saw
the
that
matter?
coming 20 years in advance.
I'm of the mind that So as a qualifier, I also grew up as a Redskins fan. I'm on probation right now for all the reasons you cited and more, but I have lots of opinions about the Redskins still, and my personal opinion is that I thought Dwayne Haskins isn't the franchise quarterback. He's just a guy, and every quarterback that's come out of that Ohio system was good in college, and then none of them have done anything in the pros because the coach was just very good there. And that was an example of like the coach was making the team work, and that the quarterback was not the one doing all the work. That's not to say Haskins is bad. I mean, he's probably one of the top 32 best quarterbacks in the world, maybe. But I don't know.
I want to put a bookmark on that because I want to come back to a point.
Okay, sure.
Please continue, but I want to.
Anyways, I feel like I'm looking at the Arizona Cardinals, who spent a first round pick on a quarterback, and then the very next year spent another first round pick on a quarterback. They picked their quarterback in the first round, realized this wasn't going to work out, got a really good pick that they didn't mean to get the next year, and now they have their franchise quarterback. And now Josh Rosen is a backup somewhere else, like he always was meant to be. I think Haskins is going to destined to be the backup somewhere.
He just cried when you said that.
Well, he went to UCLA, so his tears tasted.
Oh,
shots fired!
Oh, shots fired!
Josh Rosen,
USC grad.
Now they have Kyler Murray, and now what if the Redskins at number 2? Okay, the Bucks, the Bengals get Joe Burrow. Okay, there's like 3 or 4 other like starting caliber prospects that people are thinking like the Patriots are going to trade up to get one of these guys. I mean, like there's a quarterback of the future in this pack. I think you have to look very hard on that. Yes, the Chase Young is he's a really good edge rusher, maybe generationally talented, but we have at some point, like, okay, we have had a good offensive line for now. We haven't given them any reason to be that good. Like one of them wants to leave, we won't let them leave. Sure, if they hired on for more, but like these guys, like when you get these good defenders, you get these good offensive linemen, you get these good teams to build around. At some point, you have to give them the engine to make it all go. Otherwise, you're just churning through talent that's not there for any reason. Kind of like Barry Sanders in Detroit. Okay, that was a talented guy, but because he's the running back, he can't carry the whole team to the Super Bowl. He never got there. Yeah. I think the Redskins have to very seriously. I'm not the GM. I don't know. I think they have to look very seriously at just saying, we need a quarterback.
I mean, would you, if it were in your shoes, if you were in their shoes, would you take Tua? Tagovailoa?
No, the one that I like.
Justin Herbert?
I'd take Herbert. I think Herbert he is like a howitzer for an arm. He's probably the best pure thrower in this draft class. He could start right away. Or he could spend a year behind Haskins, make Haskins a fight for it. The worst case scenario is that you get the better of the two.
Yeah. You would take him over Chase Young?
I think I have to strongly consider it, especially considering that my franchise right now is tanking in terms like they can't fill a stadium. There's nothing. Why would you? Nobody goes to the stadium to a rebuilding franchise to watch an edge rusher. I mean, they're good. They're really good in real life football, but I hate to bring the business side of it into it, but like, I don't get excited about watching. Like Dwayne Haskins doesn't make me come. Like I don't care that he's there. I would be interested to watch Herbert. I'd be interested to watch Tua. I think I'm kind of pumping the brakes on Tua a little bit. I think I'm worried about the injury stuff. And he's. But anyways, I think you go with Herbert, or you trade down a couple spots, see what else you can get in the draft, and then take Love. I think you take a quarterback. This is a really good quarterback class and a good wide receiver class. I think you take one of both and just go from there. And then the next couple of years, focus just on defense. The Redskins have been focusing on defense the last several.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to a point that you brought up.
The Ohio State thing?
Yes, but I'm actually going to speak in generalities. But also, like, side note, Khalil Mack, I would go to a game to watch Khalil Mack. I think he's an edge rusher that would put fans in the stands for the fact that he's just awesome. Going to a game to watch this dude explode. Like, I watched him decimate an entire offense by himself. Interception, a fumble recovery, multiple sacks. Anyway, I'm just saying, if you could find a talent like that, but that's the few and far between.
Is Chase Young the next Khalil Mack? Because Khalil Mack, that's like being like, well, yeah, if you get Tom Brady, he's the Tom Brady of defense, basically. I mean, he's an unusual talent.
So, okay, I'm going to go back to this point, and I'm going to start with I don't watch college football for a reason.
Attracted to that for?
There's something about it. And I know a lot of people would be upset if they heard this because college football means so much to so many people. But when I'm looking at college sports, college football, unless you're one of the main recruiting schools, you're nothing. Every now and then an upset happens, and I think that's what's so amazing is that an upset, whoa, nobody expected this to ever happen. But generally, if you're Ohio State, if you're Alabama, if you're LSU, if you're one of these big recruiting schools that gets it requires so many people to make the puzzle for a football team that those schools run over people. Like those schools decimate people. I prefer college basketball. I like watching college basketball because you can have one amazing talented kid take over an entire court, and it's just so impressive to watch. But when it comes to football, outside of these big schools, that's where the talent drop off is so steep. So I'm going to bring up a point with this. You were talking about Ohio State in the system that they had, because a lot of the teams that they're going up against aren't major competitors. They have some tough schools that they play against, but for the most part, when they're playing some of these smaller programs, they're going to absolutely steamroll them because people want to go play for Ohio State. Like people try, that's why they get such good talent. Look at the Redskins defense. We have Alabama's defense. Alabama's defense crushed people in college. I can't even count how many years it's been, but Alabama always has a stout and dominant defense. That's how they play. Strong running game, strong defense. Overall, just great play. You take a whole bunch of those defensive players. We literally have I think 5 or 6 on our defense, and we still suck. Why is that? Because at the pro level, everybody is comprised of all these big programs, all these big schools. So yeah, Dwayne Haskins looks lights out in college because he's playing for Ohio State. But you come to the Redskins in the pros, you're not going to look lights out. You're not going to look like you're a Hall of Fame quarterback. That's where this whole guise of college football talent doesn't translate to the pros. That's why a lot of people find it a hard wake-up call, Matt Leinart. When you get into the pros, it's not going to be the same. You're not just going to carry teams. Some people do. You got your diamonds in the rough. You have your awkward Tom Brady stories where this guy who's clearly not meant to be here just lives the dream, right? But
the Holmes and the Watsons, every once in a while you get those.
You don't expect it. It's such an interesting concept that the Redskins seem like they did everything they could to go out of their way to draft people from Alabama. We have so many Alabama players on our team, and they still can't perform. And I think that has to do a lot with the coaching. As you said, in college, they're college coaches in some of these bigger programs. They do a good job of utilizing their talent the way that they're supposed to be utilized. In the pros, it seems like pro coaches more like, no, you're going to bend to my scheme. If you want to be here, you need to fit my scheme, instead of them saying, okay, this is your skill set. Let's play into that. You know who did a great job of that? And I feel like he didn't get a lot of credit was the Shanahan tandem. They changed their entire offense to suit RG3, and he killed it. RG3 killed it his first season. Rookie of the year. Yeah, he got injured. Yeah, there was big mistakes and mess-ups when it came to handling his injuries. Terrible. But if it wasn't for that program, if it wasn't for that system, he wouldn't have done anything. They changed their whole system to fit his play style. That is smart. And a lot of coaches don't do that, Jay Gruden included.
I just want to interrupt for one quick second just to change the subject as we're going along. This is all fascinating stuff and amazing, and we can get back to it in a minute. But I want to make sure that we hit on other sports, too, in addition to football, which we all love. One of the big developments, I think, in this in the coronavirus era is esports.
Okay.
The rise of and we say esports, but that's really a euphemism for video games, right? So let's talk about video games for a little bit. I want to hear from both of you because I also want to talk about the 2020 Olympics, because the 2020 Olympics have been affected by this, right? There were supposed to be Olympics this summer. They have been postponed now until July of 2021. I just want to do a quick aside. We'll go back to what we were just talking about, but I just want to do this real quick. The Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games have been delayed officially by the IOC, International Olympic Committee, until 2021 for good reason, I think. I think it's a smart move for them to do that. The travel and the distance thing is a real threat, especially in a place that's as dense as Tokyo. But here's a fun thing I just wanted to bring up, and I just wanted to get your guys' take on it. There are going to be 5 new sports in the Olympic Games next year. And here's what they are. Baseball is coming back for the first time since 2008. The last time we saw baseball played was in Beijing in 2008. Surfing is going to make its debut in the Olympics this year. At some point, my computer will work. There we go. Oh, they all came out at once. There we go. Sports climbing, which basically is like climbing up a wall. Skateboarding, of course. You know, why hasn't that been in the Olympics yet? It's kind of an X Games sport. And finally, my personal favorite, karate. There's going to be karate at the Olympics. I wanted to bring this up only because just like zooming out of the football thing, because like I love that we just talked about football for a while, which is like the most normal conversation I've heard in a while about anything in the world. I love that there's optimism that football is going to happen in September. But given what I just said about the Olympics, how the Olympics, the greatest Olympic event, the greatest athletic event in the world, has been postponed and moved, and this is months away. This is July, not very far from when the NFL season or the NCAA football season starts. Do we think that the NFL season this year is actually going to happen?
I think so.
How?
Well, luckily it doesn't start until the fall, so it gives us a lot of time. I think most estimates will put this thing. My assumption is that this thing will start opening up a little bit by the end of the summer. That's an optimistic point of view. I think it could. It very well may. There's a long time between now and then. I also think the NFL is stubborn and greedy. And I think that those two things will factor in. And it's the combination of my unbridled excitement and enthusiasm with their greed. And
so you're saying that the NFL's desire for financial protection, maintenance, is going to inform them to decide to open the NFL 2021 season.
I think it'll factor in. I mean, I don't know if it'll be like the deciding factor. I don't think you can just say, "Oh, I want money, therefore I'm going to just open up these."
I think you can. I think that's the problem.
But maybe you can.
And it's not just the NFL. I think it's businesses all over the country. I think it's going to be. I think that starting this summer, you're going to start to see a big push from a lot of corporate interests to say, like, time to get back to normal, folks.
Hey, we already see that. I mean, that's already started, and I think you're right. I think we'll see more of that as we go on. And I think by the end of the summer, people will be, if they're going to be very eager to get back to regular life. It's entirely feasible too that we just can do that. Like it might just be that the CDC is like, all right, well, hey, we got past the worst of it. It was just like spring into summer thing. There'll be a resurgence in the fall maybe, but I think the season might start. I don't know if the preseason will happen though.
I think they're going to skip the preseason regardless. Like
also this year, because they're also going to extend the season by a game. So
one of the things that Major League Baseball is toying with an experiment right now. I don't know if you guys have read about this. That during the month of May, they're going to put all the baseball teams. I don't remember how many there are. I think it's like 20. How many baseball teams total? They're going to put them all in quarantine in Arizona, and have them all play their games from quarantine in an empty stadium. They're going to quarantine the players, all of them. Everyone gets quarantined in Arizona, and then they play all of their games in a quarantine stadium. So they actually play through their entire season in silence. And I wonder what that would be like. Is that something that the NFL could also do? is that something that would that even be on brand?
If it happens, we'll finally find out. If it happens, we'll finally find out the Seattle Seahawks have ever been good, because they've always had this. They've always had this crazy advantage of having the loudest stadium, and they cheat by piping in more noise. So
that's right.
I would be curious to know if they've actually been good or if they've just played in the best stadium.
Yeah, when they have a 4-12 season, we'll know for sure.
I can imagine, and you'll like this, Chris. I imagine Pete Carroll will push very strongly for that not to be the case. We need our fans. We need the 12th man.
So, here's the thing. There's two groups of people that you can expect after this crisis. One is the group of people who are like, oh my God, I've been locked in my house for so long. I have to get out. I need to see people. I need to be part of the world. We need to do this. Let's go to every event we could possibly go. We're going to concerts. We're going to football games. We're going to bars. We're going everywhere. And then there's the other group of people that are terrified about everything that has already just happened and will remove themselves from society and stick to social distancing. It's inevitable. There's going to be that group of people that still live in social distance, immunocompromised people. After all this stuff is going on, even when it's done, there's still going to be, oh my gosh, the effects of this could still happen. I could still easily get sick, so on and so forth. So when this is immediately over, and I expect that by the time football season rolls around, this will either be just barely coming to an end or still slightly ongoing. I don't think that we're going to be running away from this situation anytime soon. So whereas in baseball, I don't know number counts off the top of my head. I'm terrible about this stuff. But stadium size in baseball stadiums is much smaller than average stadium size football stadiums, right? I don't know. How would the NFL survive if people don't go to games? There was already issues when I used to live in San Diego that when there weren't enough people going to the stadium, I don't know if it was punishment, but when not enough people bought tickets to go to the games, they shut it off on local television. You could not watch a local San Diego Chargers game because you weren't going to the games.
Yeah. Right. I remember living in LA. I remember my friends. You guys know Mitch Lerner. He and I lived at the time, and we used to hate the Chargers because LA didn't have a team at the time, and so their market, they had the same market for TV. So if the Chargers couldn't fill their stadium down in San Diego, nobody in LA or Southern California got to watch any football without going to a bar.
Yeah.
Go to a sports bar. I mean, it was it's like, oh my God, I took it really personally. So.
And nobody ever went to Chargers games. So
and no one was going to Chargers games.
So it never happened. That's so true. And I mean, but imagine for a minute, what an NFL season would be like. 32 teams. Everybody has 16 games a season. How many games a day? That's 6, 7, 8 games a day. Per Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Monday. Played in total silence in an empty stadium. For baseball, that would mean 162 games. For 30, there are 30 teams. I just looked it up. 30 teams in Major League Baseball. 162 games each. Played in silence for an entire season. It is difficult to imagine what that would be like. It's never happened before. Well, we've seen baseball games played without crowds, but not for an entire season.
Just before all the countries. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Adam. I just want to make a side comment.
You're good.
Before everything got fully shut down, but as we were starting to worry about this stuff, there were still lingering sports events around the world, and there was a couple instances of soccer matches that were playing to empty stadiums, and it was kind of interesting to watch the players react to that. They kind of mockingly acted with bravado when they did something cool, knowing that nobody was watching. Just because, and one of them jumped up into the stands and went and sat in the stands. I wonder if at first it would be kind of novel and funny, and then after a while it just feels like, what are we doing?
I think it'd be novel and funny for 5 seconds, then it'd become awkward and weird awfully fast, and that's kind of what I'm worried about here. But there is one realm of sports that will not be affected by this, and that's esports.
Well, not affected by it negatively.
Not affected by it negatively, right? In fact, quite the contrary. In fact, the literature says that esports is experiencing a boom right now. We are broadcasting live right now on Twitch. which is very quickly becoming a leading platform for people who are looking for something to watch that's competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Twitch is like approaching like the new ESPN in terms of like a destination. Like ESPN is about to transfer entirely to archival programming, specials, and news programs, and that's all they've got. They cannot do live sports anymore at all. There are no live sports, so they're all it's all going to be news shows and archive and like old games. Meanwhile, if you go on Twitch, you can watch all kinds of crazy stuff. You can watch Overwatch tournaments. You can see Call of Duty tournaments. You can see, I mean,
League of Legends. Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. So I want to hear you, both of you. I am not a video game player. You guys both are. Tell me what you're seeing in those spaces. What the people that you play with, talking to, what are they saying? Like, what is the energy there?
What is the energy behind esports? I mean, the thing is, it's been growing for a while. This just gave people more of an excuse to actually do it, right? You know, I'd say it's the old story, like when you're talking to your parents and they're like, what are you doing with your life? You're like, I'm gonna sit at home and I'm gonna smoke pot and I'm gonna play video games, blah blah blah. Well, now that's a reality for so many people, and people who are like getting mocked that they need a real job, they're like, fuck it, I've got nothing better to do. I'm going to play these video games that I'm already damn good at. And now I know of a bunch of people who, because of this, they're like, well, I might as well start streaming. There's no reason not to. Like, I've got my webcam. I've got the ability to do so.
And
I'm going to stream. And nothing else to do. So Twitch is the platform that I use. For anybody out there who doesn't know, it should be in my bio on my page, but I used to work for Sony. I'm published on 3 Sony titles, and I was sponsored to play Battlefield Bad Company 1 and 2. So I used to compete competitively. Smart. Yeah, I talk much. I used to compete professionally. I was paid for it. And now, while I don't play professionally, I do still stream because I love being a personality. I like talking. I like doing things like this. So I stream when I play competitive style games. Like Heroes of the Storm. Unfortunately, they just lost their pro circuit because Blizzard did that. But yeah, it's still fun, and there's still a lot of people playing it. You can hop online right now. There's so many streamers. Excuse me. Right now, there's a game out called Valorant. And one of the most popular streamers on Twitch, Dr. Disrespect, he currently has, check this out, guys. He's playing a video game. He has 23.
When it comes to longevity, who has the highest percentage of its vehicles still on the road today? Subaru. When it comes to best overall value, who does IntelliChoice rank #1? Subaru. And when it comes to safety, who has more 2020 IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus winning vehicles? More than Toyota, Honda, and Hyundai combined? Subaru. It's easy to love a car you can trust. It's easy to love a Subaru.
Get 0% APR financing for 63 months on select Subaru models now through April 30th.
You know, transitioning from sports to this is a great example of that because, you know, when the NBA first shut down, one of their big things was when there was a matchup coming up, the players would actually play out the game on 2K, and it was televised. And then eventually ESPN televised the whole tournament, but it was televised, the matchup that was being played, and they would post it every day on my Bleacher Report feed, like the Wizards won, blah, 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 because these are players playing the actual game of themselves. And I think that's such a genius idea.
Need a freelancer?
Players can log in. You can play 5-on-5. Each player can play themselves if they want. And you can have legit showdowns on a court if you want to get 10 people playing. I think that's amazing. That's just one example of transitioning from this major sport. How do you still get it televised? You have these personalities who like to play video games, and now they get a chance to do what they actually truly love, just in video game form, and they can still get themselves out there. They can still play. So I think it's an interesting time period. I think this is going to set the stage for a professionalized gaming scene through the esports format.
Yeah, that's right. And it's going to be a big deal because esports will be making its debut in the 2024 Olympics.
Yes,
wow.
Yes, it will.
What I want to know is what game would they play? Of the games that are popular for esports playing, you either have shooters, and I don't think that they would put that on at the Olympics. I don't think they're going to have a Call of Duty tournament in the Olympics. So then the next thing would be something like League of Legends, right?
I could see being League of Legends.
But there's so many people who don't understand what that means. The League of
A lot
Legos.
people don't understand. And it's interesting. One of the things I think, actually, you raise a really interesting point, because, like, esports, unlike any other sport that would be in the Olympics, the platform it's being played on is a product. So, when you see a bunch of people go do curling, like the court that curling happens on, the materials it happens on, it's like, that's not the synonymous with, like, Sony or Blizzard or something like that. It's just a bunch of tools that you can get. Yeah. Whereas if you ever watch a bunch of people playing League of Legends,
I'm coming to your island.
Yay! Wow, this looks great, Mom. It's very creative.
That is produced
Nintendo Switch is our way to play. Rated everyone.
Go out and buy that game, and so in
last
a way,
Sunday
it's like
we ran the
commercial for that game, and so
last Sunday we ran
the sort of commercial and ethical considerations that go into that, I think are pretty interesting, and I would like to know also how they resolve that. Or if it's some neutral game that's like made to be like the Olympic game.
Last Sunday we ran the first.
It's just one of those things that I think they're hoping that by 2024 there'll be enough praise and information about it at that time that people will have more of an understanding of it by the time it makes it to the grand stage. I mean, otherwise, let's be real, a large portion of the population knows what League of Legends is, but a very large portion of the population doesn't. So now I guess the question would be, would they find like an Olympics favored video game to do an esports twist with? Like, is there any information on the esports category that they're going to be doing? Like, it's just, there's already professional teams. It's just, it's not well known. Not well known enough for global Olympics.
Well, that's a good point. But I remember when snowboarding was first brought in the Olympics, there was a lot of people who were like, "Well, us for kids, and we adults, we don't know that, and we don't much care for it." And now it is a thing. And skateboarding is about to join. Skateboarding can same could be said about that. I think popularity of curling is the other end of things. Like I've never met a person who played curling seriously in a real way, let alone an Olympic athlete who does it. But people do it, and it's an Olympic sport. And so I feel like the popularity of something is secondary to whether or not it could be competitive, whether or not it's interesting. One last point that I'd like to make about esports, just to show about how to tie it in with coronavirus and how this is all getting bigger, is that even the Washington Post, where I work, has begun its own dedicated esports subsection, the sports section called Launcher. I think Mike Hume is the editor for it. But this was all like just recently done. Like they're it's being very much acknowledged as a thing that's going to be getting bigger and that people are interested in coverage for it. So all the questions that we're asking now, not to plug it, but I think that's not a bad place to look for information about that. ESPN also has it.
So all the people who are home right now, or have been sent home, either been furloughed or been laid off or are looking for work or whatever, and you're looking for something to do, turns out that sprucing up on your video game skills, not so bad an idea, because you could be either the subject of a Washington Post piece soon, or you could be a contender in the 2024 Olympic Games.
I have a lot of friends who are off work who are either discovering for the first time or rediscovering after a long time video games. So I think that as a realm, just in general, even non-professionally, I think is going to experience a boom. Some industries are going to profit a lot from this whole thing. We talk a lot about furloughed, people getting fired, the economy falling down, but there's a handful of industries that are going to actually boom from this, and video games might be one of them.
That's right.
Yeah.
And there are some people who have been training for this day their entire lives. We are
finally
out of time. It's all been for something. We're out of time, I'm afraid. I want to say a very special thank you to Ross Godwin, who joined us today as our co-host. Could not have done this without you, sir. Thank you so much for your wisdom and insight.
It's been a lot of fun, guys.
into subject matter that I know literally nothing about. Adam Levy, also amazing. And I wanted to ask you before we sign off, any final thoughts? Any final messages out there for people thinking about sports in this time where they're stuck at home and quarantine?
I know so many people out there that crave sports. Like, even if it was just on TV, something to watch, something to view, which is why esports is growing so much. Although skeptical, I truly hope that sports, football specifically, does continue, especially during that time of year. I'm hoping that everything goes, because the fall is my favorite time. That's when the basketball season starts. That's when hockey season starts. That's when football is in. Come October, that's what I'm hoping for. It'd be nice to feel a little sense of normalcy amidst all the chaos that's been going on for the past month and a half. So I truly hope, although, like I said, I'm skeptical that it's going to happen, I truly hope that it does. And if not, I think you're going to see a bigger boom in the esports realm, people playing Madden, people playing NBA 2K, like popularizing the same sport that people can view. I mean, crap, I could load up Madden right now and I could play it for people who want to watch football. If people want to watch football, I can put on some backseat gaming. They can tell me who to bench, and then I'll put in whoever they want.
Yeah,
you want Trent Dilfer? I'm bringing Trent Dilfer back. This dude's going to win another Super Bowl.
Hey, win a season.
Underrated Trent Dilfer.
Dwayne Haskins. Put Dwayne Haskins in.
And Dwayne Haskins, that's exactly right.
DH is coming in.
And that's why we stream on Twitch. I think that Twitch is a result of this. I think one of the takeaways, recap, if we're going to recap this, Adam, I think one of the takeaways we could take away from this is places like Twitch are going to become a destination for anybody who's going to miss ESPN in a couple of months, and who hasn't watched live sports in a while. I think Twitch is going to become possibly the new ESPN.
It's owned by Amazon, so
it's not possible. Well, and on that insane bombshell, it is in time to end. Thank you both very much for your time tonight. Again, this is Corona with Lime. We're on every Monday and Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific. We're having a great time doing this. Please join us again. We're going to be back on Thursday with a big new awesome show. Thanks again to Ross and Adam. You guys are amazing. And because we're talking about esports and sports today, Adam and I thought it'd be fun to end with a little homage to something that happened a couple of days ago on Saturday Night Live. And without further ado,